Hey Grace Church, my name is Josh. Welcome to the weekly for the week of December 11th. Today we are talking about Jesus and his authority. So for the last 35 weeks, we've been walking through the book of Mark, and we have seen a tension that is rising to a boiling point between the religious leaders and Jesus around this issue of power. In Mark chapter 1, Jesus is teaching, and the people say, "Who is this that teaches with authority?" In Mark chapter 2, he heals a paralyzed man and says, "Your sins are forgiven." They say, "Who has authority to forgive sins?" Mark chapter 4, the disciples are caught in a storm. Jesus tells the storm to be quiet. The disciples are like, "Who is this that has authority over the winds and the wave?" Mark 5, he tells a little girl who's dead to get up. And the family says, "Who has authority to tell the dead to rise?" And so this has been this long, boiling story that ends this week in Jerusalem when Jesus walks into the temple and these religious leaders confront him. And they ask the question, "By what authority do you claim to be king of the Jews? By what authority do you cleanse the temple? By what authority do you do these things?" And I said to us, that is not just a good question, that is the great question of the whole world. By what authority does Jesus do these things? They say, be true to yourself, follow your heart, live your truth, you do you. Basically, the whole world is telling us you need to be your own authority. Don't let others allow others' opinions to sway you. And so we find ourselves being the authority in our lives. And so Jesus comes along and says, hey, those little phrases, they're not just cute sayings. Those are actually dangerous lies. Like, to believe those things is going to lead you to a place you don't want to go because you are not capable of being the authority over your life. I find this with my 3-year-old daughter always telling me what to do when I'm looking at her and I'm like, me being the authority is actually good for you. And so many times in my own life, I find that I am acting towards the Lord as my 3-year-old daughter acts towards me, where I want to be the authority when ultimately that's not going to lead to my flourishing. So this begs the question, why is Jesus so insistent on getting his authority to rule over our lives? And the answer is that it's through his authority, us submitting to his authority is the way that Jesus transforms us. And so the truth is Jesus is trying to do something in you, and the enemy's trying to not let Jesus do that thing in you. And the way that you allow Jesus' power to reign through you is the more you allow his authority to reign over you. Because here's the principle we tried to say over and over this past Sunday. Jesus, his authority over you allows him to reproduce his character in you. The more you let Jesus' authority reign over your life, the more you allow him to reproduce his character in you. And listen, we know that this is not an easy thing. We recognize this is the battle of your whole life, is submitting to the authority of Jesus, surrendering to the authority of Jesus, taking your hands off the wheel of your life and letting Jesus be the one that directs things, because he is in fact the good architect. He is the one that is capable of leading you towards flourishing. And so the more you are in submission to Jesus and his authority, the more you're going to experience flourishing in your life. And so we finished the sermon by connecting a story in the book of Luke where Jesus encounters the Roman centurion. And the centurion has a servant who's paralyzed and needs to be healed. And he goes to Jesus and says, "Will you heal my servant?" And Jesus says, "Sure, let's go to your house." And the centurion stops him and says, "I'm not worthy to have you under my roof. But I know how the authority works," the centurion says. "I have men under me and I tell them to go here and there and they do what I say. And so all you have to do, Jesus, is say the word and my servant will be healed, because that's the kind of authority you have." And Jesus stops the crowd and he's amazed and he says, I have not found this much faith in all of Israel. So the Roman centurion is the one who has more faith than anyone in Israel, primarily because he believes and has faith in Jesus' authority. He knows who Jesus is. He knows that he has power in his words. And so, Grace Church, may we not be like the religious leaders who question the authority of Jesus, who question the right Jesus has to reign over us. May we be like the centurion that says, I know who you are. I know what you're capable of. And I have put all my trust in the fact that you are the one that can heal. You're the one that can lead us to flourishing. So, Grace, let's be more like the centurion than like the religious leaders.